I am here at South Korea's newest museum. This literally opened 4 days ago on Tuesday. It's a Saturday now. I'm gonna go in this part first, but you need reservations for this part, and that's because this is the old headquarters of the Anti-Communist police investigation forces that would have had some sort of power or control during the late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, up until the late 80s when Democratisation happened, and this would have been disbanded. But this is the old headquarters. So we'll go check out the newest not rebuilt, but the new museum first. But this should be more interesting because this is some pretty horrific stuff in there. So let's get into it. These are the rear doors where the prisoners would have been taken into that building over there. So these are designed to look slightly ajar, slightly open for effect, so that some screams of anguish, some truth can get out of the building that housed such like terrible things only 40 years ago. This is not ancient history at all. So basically, this building is most known for torturing Park Jongchul, who was an SNU student in 1987. They brought him in, they waterboarded him and stuck his face underwater, and he had a heart attack when he was here, and he died. And the government tried to cover it up, and his family were pissed, obviously, because they knew he'd been brought here, but nothing was happening. And then when they found out he died, they were like, he died in his sleep, and this whole nightmare. You have to remember back then that you didn't have a right to a lawyer. You didn't have the right to a 24-hour detention with, then they'd need actual proof, or to have a judge order you to remain in prison while they still investigated. With the anti-communist police, it was very much, we've suspected you of anti-government activities. And you're a spy, and it was as easy as pointing a finger as long as you worked for certain branches of the government. There was no evidence necessary. This is much akin to McCarthyism in the 50s, but with McCarthyism, I'm not trying to defend it, but, it was like you'd lose your job in Hollywood necessarily because you'd be marked with a brush, right? Which is horrible. But it's not prison by the police with torture interrogation bad. So this is one of the worst places in Korea. This is an example of cases that they would have against individuals, just books and books and books and books and books. And there was little to no evidence required for you to get fingered by the government and say, we're investigating you on trumped up charges of spying for the North. Anyone they didn't like, as journalists, student organizers who were against government activities, who were just basically meeting in secret and talking about how bad the government was. These are not people putting bombs in mailboxes. It's not like that. So I'm on the second floor now of the building you need reservations for, and I've been waiting for this place to open forever. So let's go explore this place. Pardon me, I'm in the shot, but that's the only way you can film a mirror. This mirror was found when they were renovating this building, and those words mean for progress. And so it really does make you wonder what they meant by progress in this situation, in this building. This is the third floor where most of the actual administration was. It doesn't matter. These were the windows back then. Even on the floors with the employees and not the prisoners. This was very much designed to be like a vault. No one can see in, no one can see out, no sound can get in, no sound can get out. The prisoners basically could only tell the time of day by the sounds from line 1 next door. Line 1 is literally 40 meters from this building. So if they knew that the trains had stopped for a couple of hours, they probably had some idea that it was, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. So very scary stuff. Obviously, they wouldn't have had this many cameras back then. In 1987, you wouldn't have had this many cameras. But this gives you an idea of the panopticon, which any students of philosophy or politics will recognize as the perfect prison, or the perfect society where everyone can watch everyone all the time. And that would reduce crime, it would reduce behavior that was undesirable, right? If everyone could see everyone all the time, no one would misbehave, and that would result in a perfect society, right? But we all know that if that were actually the case, that's not perfect. It's not the society that we necessarily want to live in. This is the section chief's office. The only person with windows in the entire building, or windows of any meaningful sense. There's the courtyard. There was a tennis court out there before for the employees, which just, and you can see how close line 1 was. That blue roof right here, that's Namyeong Station. It's right there. You may notice some weird audio. There's some strange sounds. This is not an accident, and it's not my equipment. Those are put through the audio system in the museum specifically to throw you off balance or make you uncomfortable or even annoyed. This is to put you in the mind frame or the mindset of someone who would have been being kept there. It's not an accident. This is specifically to make you uncomfortable. So if you notice, maybe you're wearing headphones. I don't usually listen wearing headphones, but I'm sure with headphones it's probably more annoying. This is not an accident. It's not my equipment. This is to make people in the museum feel uncomfortable and feel on edge the entire time they're there. So this is on purpose from the organizers and planners of the museum. We are now in one of the interrogation rooms. And so that black glass up there, that would have been one way. And that would have housed cameras to, record the interrogation. There'd be microphones hidden around the room too. This is a more modern example of CCTV, a lot smaller, as you can see. And basically this mat, a prisoner would have been rolled up in this mat and then beaten with sticks like this. So you can't flail around even. Like, they're not just beating you on the ground. They've rolled you up so you can't move, and then you're beaten. So, yeah, as witnessed here, or as shown here. And yeah, they could tie you to this face down and do whatever they want to you. I must say, this bathroom is very of the 70s. This tub is shaped like this for a purpose. This is Seoul, by the way, not Gwangju. So this room basically talks about the student that I talked about earlier, Park Jongchul. He was arrested. He's a third-year student at Seoul National University. He's brought in. The government tried to cover up his death, and John Doo-hwan, the president, I've talked about him before, huge piece of shit. He tried to say, no amendments will be made to the Constitution for elections, nothing, go away. That was in April. And by June, the streets looked like this. And this is the absolute final straw that broke the camel's back that led to the first democratic elections in South Korea. That's Seoul Station there. So this room is glassed off, and that's because there's been a lot of renovation here. This is the only room in the entire building that was left as is. You can see the scuff marks on the floor. That's Park Jongchul there. This is the room where he died, and that's the tub where they drowned him in, basically. So everything's remained untouched. And again, this is the only one that's remained in its original condition since the renovations. So these are all investigation rooms. These are not really holding cells. It's important to note that. This is where they would have been brought. These are plywood with vinyl paint specifically for soundproofing. This is right in downtown. Like, these people weren't being brought out to some countryside horror prison, right? We're in the center of Seoul. Seoul Station is one stop north of here that way. So it's important to note that, like, there may have been some indication among the populace that bad things happened here, but they weren't hearing screams. There was no hands coming out of windows waving flags for help, right? So, you got a little toilet here and a sink, and you'd be sat here and questioned incessantly. And there's microphones, and there's the hidden place for the cameras up there, right? All of this is, yeah. And this is just room 510. This entire hallway is just investigation rooms. that kind of wraps up what I've been doing here. Again, it's only 4 days old. I'm very sure that I'm going to be the first English language video to cover this place. I know this isn't for everyone, but I think it's important to come to these places and recognize, you know, it's kind of cliched, like, oh, your grandpa he died in Dieppe, or he died in Vichy, or on the beaches of Normandy for freedoms you have today. But I think it's important to recognize that, you know, I don't need permission to go to Busan. I can just go. That's not the case for everyone in the world. And taking that for granted is something that we all do, but occasionally reminding yourself that, you know, I can make videos about Yoon Suk-yeol and call him a fucking retard. And I can make videos about this, and I can go to Busan, and I can say what I want. I can write for the newspaper. I can write articles for the Korea Times, and no one's gonna censor them. I can't write whatever I want because there needs to be some sort of thing, but the government doesn't do that, right? That's the editorial staff at the Korea Times who are going to use their judgment. It is a form of censorship, you can argue, but it's not laws that are doing that, and they don't apply to everyone across the country. It's my writing for a newspaper that's being edited by people at the newspaper who think this is what the best story will be for sales, and getting into capitalism is a whole other video that we can make. But my point is, horrible things happened here, and it was very bizarre being in a room where a 22-year-old was drowned to death by government police. But it's important to remind yourself. I mean, no one goes to Auschwitz for fun. No one's like, hey, honey, pick up the kids, pack the car. We're going to Auschwitz. We go there to remind ourselves that the depravity and depths that human can go to do happen, and this is not that long ago. This is 40 years. Auschwitz is 80. It's important to remind yourself of these things and to kind of show gratitude for the things that we can do today and to make sure that they remain that way. We all know what's going on in the US. It's not a police state like this at this point, but ICE are stopping people who are citizens and taking them in. You know, it's like, it's bizarre. And keeping that at bay for as long as possible and fighting for what we do every day that seems banal, like writing for the newspaper or going to a different province or making fun of the administration that's in power right now. These are all things that we can't take for granted. And this is absolute proof of that. This is real, and it happened. And people were just pointed at and told they were communists, brought here. And you know, the vast majority of them were not drowned to death, but that's not the point. The very fact that they were brought here at all is the problem, right? And so reminding people of that and showing people on my channel that these things happen and can happen even in the future for any society. These things are fairly brittle if we want to get down to brass tacks. So come here and just revel in the fact that when you come here, it's not in the back of a van.